I'd love for you to break down how you think now about designing educational programs, because you do such a good job balancing the theoretical and the philosophical, which is also very important. You have to understand the philosophical side of anything that you're pursuing, but especially in the world of ideas, but then pairing that with the activities that actually allow someone to embody and work with the ideas that they're consuming, often in the form of writing and publishing. How do you think about that? Like, what are the things you are thinking about when you're designing a program?
Yeah. So what really changed my thinking about how to educate in economics and in the freedom philosophy was when my experience as an editor became more in a coaching approach. Because like previously when I was editing, like I would just receive submissions and then just publish them if they were good enough and just make some edits if they needed some fixes. Um, but then at Fee was the first time where I had where I wasn't just taking submissions from outside writers. I actually had a team of writers, and so what that gave me the opportunity to do was to have writers who were kind of as students, where I was trying to help them become better writers, but also just better economists, like better at understanding these ideas that they're writing about. And so I got more experience with editing them in more detail, on coaching them on the ideas, like fixing misconceptions that they had, fixing misstatements that they had. So that was a big part of it. But then another big part of it was when I started working for Praxis. At one point, Isaac Morehouse, the founder of Praxis, reached out and asked me if I could run the writing module of Praxis. And what was great about Praxis is that it has this month of writing where you challenge the Praxis participants to blog every single day, and so it was this habit building thing of building the muscle of just clicking publish on something every day and articulating your thoughts on something every single day, and on learning out loud. The way you guys talk about learning out loud, building a portfolio of that shows what you're learning about by articulating things in your own words. And so I started learning the Praxis way of doing things by running this writing module and coaching in the way that Isaac had coached. And and it was also an introduction to the model of education that Praxis approaches, which is an apprenticeship model. It's learning not just for the abstract, but learning for a job and even on the job. And what the connection that I started to make was that I'd like to do something like Praxis at Fee. That I would like to see if we can have a apprenticeship program for economics writers, where people are learning the subject matter, but also learning the art of writing on the job to actually publish on uh, a website, like a real website, a professional website, like fee.org, and to see if that is a way to learn economics just as well as going, or even better than going to an undergraduate program in economics would be. And another source of inspiration for this was a figure who's associated with Fee named Henry Hazlitt. And because Henry Hazlitt, that's exactly how he became a great economist. That so Henry Hazlitt he was a really intellectual child, like in the early 20th century. And he had dreams of becoming like an Ivy League scholar, an Ivy League philosopher. Um, but his dad died when he was very young, and his family couldn't afford for him to go to college, so he had to just start working. But he was still really fascinated in the world of ideas. So he thought, okay, if I have to work, like at least I want to do something in the world of ideas. So he got a job at the Wall Street Journal. And at first it was just like basically being a stenographer. And but eventually he got to try his hand at like writing short little pieces. And then he started teaching himself economics in order to do his job as a journalist better. And eventually, he taught himself economics so well that he wrote Economics in One Lesson, which is one of the absolute classics of economics education that has taught millions and millions of people about economics. And he became a great economist just through on the job research. Um, he also he also kind of recruited his own faculty. So, like while he was doing economic journalism, he developed friendships with economists, and he would just go visit them in their office and just pick their brain. And so it was just like this free faculty, even though he never ended up going to college. Like he just recruited the faculty anyway, and then he created his own assignments by writing economic op-eds. He became the one of the main op-ed writers, editorial writers for the New York Times during the New Deal. He was one of the main voices against the New Deal, making the case for free market economics against the New Deal. And then it all culminated with Economics in One Lesson as his great masterpiece. And so I started this apprenticeship program called the Hazlitt Project to try to systematically produce that, like a program where young people can teach themselves to become economists and to become economics educators and communicators through publishing for the public, not in the cloistered ivory tower, but actually to learn out loud as they're studying economics themselves, and then learning how to master these ideas by communicating them to readers. And so that's how the fellowship program at Fee started.
I know it's been an iterative process between the first cohort and the most recent cohort that you've run in terms of refining the curriculum, refining the approach, really dialing in both the instructional style, but also the specific assignments that you're giving to the fellows going through the program. What has that process looked like?
Yeah. So let's see. In the first cohort, um, basically it was just asking them to just write articles and then just editing them and just trying to coach them through it. But since then, I've learned new methods of writing education that I've adopted, and so there's this organization called the Institute for Excellence in Writing, and they have this method. Basically, it's the way Benjamin Franklin taught himself how to write. So Benjamin Franklin had this one particular magazine that he just loved, and he wanted to learn how to write in the style of this magazine. And so what he would do is that he would take a passage, what we call a source text, and then for every sentence he would just pick a few key words, and so he would make like a list, what we call a keyword outline of like maybe 3 keywords for each sentence. And then he would put the source text away. And then with the keyword outline, he would use the keywords to remind himself of the meaning of the source text, and then rewrite that meaning in his own language and in his own words. And that is a really great method for 2 things: for teaching writing and for teaching the ideas themselves. Because a big hangup that a lot of especially young writers have with learning how to write is that you have to come up with what to say and how to say it. And it's hard enough just to figure out how to say something, but to expect to have like original ideas and like original insights and truth claims and stories and things like that, and figure out like how to express that, like that's why like the people just get stuck at the beginning, because it's just so complex. But if you provide them with the message and just challenge them to just put it in their own words, then it becomes easy enough where you can just get your reps in, and you can just, take a source text, do the keyword outline, rewrite it in your own words. Boom, you've got some practice writing. Do that again the next day. And so it's a really effective way of learning how to write. It's also a really effective way of learning the ideas, because in order to get from the source text to the keyword outline to the rewrite, you have to internalize it. Like you can't just sort of like, have your eyes glaze over the text. Like you have to internalize it well enough so that you can actively recall it from just the keywords. And then by actively recalling it to write it out, it signals to your brain that like, okay, this is something I actually need, so I'm going to retain this. And so it's just a really great learning exercise. And so the Institute for Excellence in Writing, my daughter used this program because my daughter did this classical conversations, classical education program, and they use their IEW's materials both for writing instruction and for U.S. history instruction. So it's the U.S. history curriculum, but it's also a writing curriculum. And because they have source texts that tell the story of U.S. history, and so the kids are learning about history by using this exercise to write about history. So they're also learning writing. And so then my thought was like, okay, let's do that for economics. Let's give these fellows or apprentices source texts in like the basics of economics, and have them write their own versions of these things. And so it teaches them the economics itself, but also how to write economics.
How do you approach the iterative process of working with a group of students and then seeing what's working in real time and then adjusting course accordingly? Because it's something you're very good at. You do this very nimbly. And I'm really curious how you think about that, or like what some of the biggest things are that you're looking for as you're thinking about continuing to refine something. Sometimes even like while you're working with individual students and you're tailoring a curriculum to the individuals within it, or thinking about like a future cohort and tweaks that you want to make.
Yeah, it's just trial and error of just seeing where people are getting hung up on something, and then just trying to figure out like a better way to do it. So for example, like with this iterative process where like I was just having them write about like whatever, um, you know, there was just a hang up where they would just get stuck because it was just too complex, because I was asking them to come up with like these original insights, and it was just, too challenging. And so then so then I thought like, okay, how do I fix that? And just sort of like just being open to other methods. And yeah, I just remembered it just so happened that my sister is friends with the founder of the Institute for Excellence in Writing.
Ah.
And so I actually had lunch with him one time, like maybe like 20 years ago or something like that. And so I've always kind of been just vaguely aware of it. But then especially like as I had my own daughter and I started getting her into classical education, and then I re-encountered this method, and so I just made the connection of like, oh, that's the missing piece. Like that's what I need to fix this problem in the program.